Yo, what it do, guys, and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to be exploring Saryn and a melee influence build. So primarily this is more focused on melee influence as a whole. I want you guys to understand how to mod for a melee influence weapon, and then we're going to be using Saryn with a Augment as well to go ahead and enhance the build a lot further and show you where she fits in on making melee influence builds even better. It's kind of like the opposite of having Curvo for critical builds. This is more like status builds and melee. So if you like that, you're definitely in the right place. Now, without further ado, let's just go ahead and do what we always go and do. We'll just jump into some abilities. Although this one's gonna be a little bit weird, so I'm just gonna explain like what we use in this build and what we're not gonna use, because it's gonna be pretty quick. All right. So let's go straight over towards the abilities. To start things off with, we have got her passive, as you can see down here. Very easy to understand. Status effects inflicted on enemies last 25% longer. So if you did a toxin proc, I think toxin procs are normally like 6 seconds long. Well, you get 25% longer. So instead of doing just 6 ticks of toxin, you might end up doing 7 or 8 ticks. I don't know the math right now. I'm sure I would have put it on the screen. All right. So either way, you're just basically increasing any kind of elements on them and making them last longer. Same goes if you were to apply viral to them or corrosive or whatever. And Saryn's got corrosive, toxin, and viral all within her kit. So her first ability is going to be Spores. Now here's the thing, listen absolutely clear. For the build that we're currently doing, we're not actually going to be using Spores, but we are going to be using its Augment. Ideally though, relatively same concept. Instead of us pressing 1 and putting Spore on an enemy, right? Because I'll show you how this kind of works right now, just in case you guys ever want to use Spores. You can kind of see what it looks like. If I go and press 1 on an enemy, you see in the bottom right there's like a HUD counter, so forth. That's going to increase damage over time. They're going to end up getting more and more corrosive on them. I can fully armor strip because of some shards that I've got. I'll explain that a bit later. You won't always fully armor strip, but basically what's going to happen here is that so long as these spores are on enemies, it's going to end up doing more and more damage. So you just basically want to kill enemies when other enemies are nearby to spread the damage over. Now you can also go ahead and spread the damage a little bit better anyways. So you either kill them and it spreads, or you use your third ability here and then you shoot, and then that will spread to all of them, as you can see here. Right now, here's the thing, we don't need to do any of that, all right, because that's not what we're going to be doing. Now we still want that corrosive, because that corrosive is still going to be good, but instead we're going to be using the Augment on the screen here. So what's actually going to happen is, instead of me tapping the ability and putting it on enemies, I'm going to hold the ability and I'm going to give me and any allies in range, I'm going to go and give them corrosive element to their weapon attacks. Okay, so it's basically buffing the weapon that we're going to be using. So we'll get to that in a moment. All right. So that's what we're going to be doing with Spores. We're not actually going to be using them. We're just going to be holding for the Augment. Now, the second ability is going to be Molt, and Molt is fantastic. A few things that you want to go know about Molt is when you do go ahead and shed your skin, you will go ahead and get movement speed, 50% movement speed. Really good to go and get yourself around. Again, works really well in melee builds because ideally you're like sprinting and staying on foot anyways. So it's a good way to go ahead and just get to the next pack of enemies nice and quick. When you do go ahead and shed your skin, you'll leave like you see it in the UI there, you will go and leave a cloned version of you behind. That basically taunts and draws fire to it, as you can see, and then it has a 3-second vulnerability. After the 3 seconds, it then has health and shields. Now what happens is if the clone dies, or it runs out of time, or you recast a new clone, a new Molt, you shed a new skin, it will explode and deal toxin damage to nearby enemies. Okay, so that's basically how that works. Now, although it is a great ability, I can use it like this, I can use it like that, it's great. But if I roll, I cannot use the ability. If I backflip, if I roll, I'm spamming the ability, I can't use it. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you do want to go and use it, try not to be in the middle of a roll. You can use it at the end of the roll, and you can use it at the beginning of the roll. All right, so that's how that's working as well. But again, what's so good about it, and the reason why this ability is absolutely fantastic, is because it doesn't really have an animation. So if I go ahead and press like 3, see that? If I go and press 4, see that? But if I go and press 2, no animation. This means it's really, really good in combination with shield gating builds. So if you have mods like Brief Respite, and if you have Augur mods, it will work really, really well as an easy way to proc free shields with no animation, no cost, no delay, no nothing. Okay, so we're going to be using this as a survival for the build that we're going to be doing. All right. Up next, we got Toxic Lash, and this ability has got a few things that are hidden behind it. To understand it, and just to make it as simple as possible, when I hit an enemy, let's say I shoot an enemy, right? If I go and shoot an enemy, let's go and get one up here so you guys can go and see this. So if I go and shoot an enemy, see that? 15 damage. Okay, shoot him again, 15 damage. If I apply Toxic Lash and I shoot an enemy, you see I've got 2 different damages there with a guaranteed toxin. So I'm going to shoot again. Okay, now it's doing different dots and so forth. But if I go and shoot this one, you'll see again 2 different numbers. So basically, you're guaranteeing toxin towards your weaponry, right? That toxin scales off your, I believe it's total damage. Again, I'll put it on the screen, but it's 30% of your overall, it's either overall damage or base damage of the weapon. I think it's overall damage of the weapon that you're using. So in order to go ahead and get more damage from it, you can go ahead and ramp it up. It will also scale off ability strength as well, so keep that in mind. But what's really interesting here, this is where it gets so confusing. So again, I'll put it on screen here. This is similar to Zaku's Sata Whisper. Now, recently I did a guide on Zaku as well, if you want to go check that out. But it's very similar to how that ability works. Instead of it being void, it's just toxin. That's the only difference. But basically, when it comes to faction, if I apply a faction mod to the weapon that I'm using, it effectively triple dips. So if you do a dart, the dart will go ahead and will basically like dip into itself because of the faction mods, and then when you apply this ability, it then triple dips into it. Again, there would have been something on the screen to explain that a little bit better so you guys can understand that. Basically, it works really well if you run it with factions. Okay, so if you're like, oh god, you're running a faction mod, is there anything else I can use? No, because it works really well with faction mods. Okay, you're triple dipping, which means you're incredibly enhancing your damage. Remember that, okay? So that's basically what's going on here. Fantastic ability, just apply at all points. Right, sorry about that, guys. I have to go ahead and quickly just edit this part. It's just this part, okay? So if it seems like a jump in the timeline, my bad, but we'll just keep going. Right, so Saryn's 4th ability is going to go ahead and be Miasma. Now, Miasma is a good ability. It tends to work in synergy with her first, but again, keep in mind, we're not actually using her first ability. We're just using the Augment. And furthermore, it would also slow us down in terms of how we're casting, but it is good for the viral that we would be getting from it. So this is going to be your Subsumable option. We're going to be taking this out because we want to use all of the other abilities within our kit. Now, you've got a few different things that you can go and subsume in here. Now, to go and keep it simple, I'm just going to go and tell you straight off the bat, Rhino's Roar, okay? When it comes to melee influence, you're going to be doing a lot of dots, you're going to be spreading a lot of damage, and you can enhance and amplify that damage, especially when it comes to status and dots, with Rhino's Roar or even faction mods, and Rhino's Roar acts as a faction mod. So if you don't want to use a faction mods within your build, you can consider Rhino's Roar. Even if you are using the faction mods, you're just essentially amplifying your damage anyways, furthermore with Rhino's Roar. All right, so that's what I'm going to be running for my build, is Rhino's Roar, but it's up to you what you want to go and run. So on screen will be some other options. You can go and use things like Grendel's Nourish if you want to. If you do go and apply that, you'll get yourself some viral towards your damage output. It also depends on how you mod your melee influence later, but we'll kind of get to that a little bit later. But viral is also going to be fine, and also viral from Grendel's Nourish will also just replace the viral that you're missing from Miasma. So that kind of just fits in there perfectly. Other things that you can use are things like, again, Volt's Shock Trooper Augment. So it's the shock ability, and then it has an augment called Shock Trooper. Now, you can use this on pretty much all of other Warframes if you're looking for like a melee elementalist build. Just kind of allows you to really enhance that like electric side of things and the electric damage that you're basically doing. You can go and do that. Ultimately, I would basically say keep it simple. You can go between Roar and Nourish is what I would go ahead and do. Now, I know this was a bit of a jump and a bit of a cut here. Hopefully, I've tried to make this as smooth as possible. But what we're going to be doing now is jumping into a melee influence build. So you're going to see me just do that in a moment, but it's just going to be all cut in. All right, excellent. Yeah, no, whatever. Sorry, I'm just trying to think about how I do this because you're going to see the build there, but maybe I can go ahead and blank that out so you guys can't go and see it because I want to go ahead and show you how it all comes together. So we take an empty build really quickly. So melee influence and what's going on here and how does it work? So first things first, melee influence is an arcane, okay? So we're looking for this one here. Now, if you go ahead and read it just really quickly, it says on melee electric status, there is a 20% chance for elemental melee status effects to apply to enemies within 20 meters for 18 seconds, and it cannot refresh whilst it's active. That's totally fine. Basically, you're just gambling 20% at all times whenever you're first off hitting, okay? Which means we're gonna want the build in some way, some shape, some capacity to end in electric and have electric as our main go-to. So let's apply this, okay? And let's talk about electric really quickly, right? So I'm going to go and put this in because it is the biggest electric mod we have got currently. As you can see, it's 90%. And I'm also going to go ahead and pop this in because this is also 60%. Okay. Now it's also good because it also gives me 60% status chance, and status chance is very important for what we're going to be doing, right? So 60% status chance, electric. Now, when I hover over this status, what you're looking for is you want electric to have the highest number percentage. What does that mean? We call this weighting, okay? We're weighting, like weighting as in like heavy weights type, as in what I am, right? Like, we're weighting the elements for a stronger probability chance that when we do hit an enemy, that element is the element that we want proccing first. Does that make sense? So if electric was 1%, the odds of me proccing it, well, impact is higher, slash is higher, puncture is higher. I'd be proccing those more than I would be proccing electricity. Does that make sense? Hopefully I've simplified and dumbed that down for you guys. So now that we've got that in, we're looking pretty good. From here onwards, we're going to want to go ahead and just increase a few things. So let's go ahead and get, I'm going to go and put this in here. We'll talk about Nami solo in a minute. I'm also going to talk about Okina as well. We'll talk about a couple of different things, but I'm going to show you how the build comes together. But Nami solo and Okina are two really, really good melee influence weapons. So we'll show you a little bit more there. So from here onwards, we can go and apply a few different things. What we want to go and do, you can either go ahead and do viral if you wanted to. You can go ahead and do that. That's looking good. Look at my status chance now. That's pretty. And if you go and see here, electric is still higher than viral, but look, if I take that out and I go ahead and do it, let's go and have a little look. Look, electric's under viral. You see why I'm using 2 electric mods now, just to try and help myself. Now, if you do have a Riven, you could roll for electric and status chance and like melee damage or whatever you want to, or even some utility. It's up to you, like range or whatever. That's fine. Maybe not a Nami solo, but you get the idea. Anyways, so I'm not going to take this though. You can go viral electric and just go with like debuffing, amplification to the health, so forth. But ideally, what you do want to be doing is going in towards the gas electric route right here, because this is going to be doing damage. If you go and read what gas does here, it's a combination of heat and toxin. It's going to go and produce clouds that deals damage to all enemies within the 3-meter radius for a short duration. And I believe, and I might go and pop it on screen here, maybe I can't quite remember, but I believe the clouds do go ahead and increase with the amount of toxin gas procs that you have on the enemy. Should be on there. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't quite remember. Anyways, up next we're doing the electric. So this is going to be doing damage over time, as you can go and see here. So that's going to be temporary, applying the stun and dealing damage over time. So they're being stunned and they're being stunned into these gas clouds. Damage. We're looking good. Right, now from there onwards, what we're going to be doing is we're going to want some damage on the weapon, and we're going to want the weapon to scale. So normally this is like, well, what do you use? Do you use prime pressure point or do you use condition overloads? I'll always explain this to go and help you guys understand. You're normally going to run 1 melee damage. So read it says melee damage. Yeah, this is going to increase your damage here, just your total damage of what's going on. When do you use which one you're using? Well, prime pressure point gives you a guaranteed 165%. Condition overload requires a prefix, and then this is the suffix. So this cannot increase any damage until something else is happening. So it's saying melee damage per status type affecting the target. Now we have a little look here. I have got slash, impact, and puncture. That's 3. So we just do a little bit of math there. 80, 160, 240. It's pretty good. We got electric and we got gas. So that is 80 multiplied by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 400% melee damage that's doing. It just needs these elements on the enemy, because again, it has to be one of each different element type, right? So this is doing 165. That's doing 400. What do I pick? Kind of a no-brainer right there, right? Lovely stuff. So hopefully you guys can understand when you're going to use them, which one and whatnot. If you go for status related and status heavy builds, and again, it doesn't have to come just from this weapon, but we're going to be using this weapon an awful lot. So from there onwards, what we're going to be doing is going to be applying weeping wounds, because again, more status chance per combo multiplier is going to be helping us. Ideally, we want to be applying statuses as often and as frequent as possible. And the more that we can go ahead and implement, and the more that we can output in such a short time span, means that they're going to build up significantly and absolutely just delete enemies. If you don't understand that, let me explain this really quickly. What happens if you go over 100% status? Just real quick. If I swing my sword once like this, yeah, in one hit, if I have 50% status chance, 50, I've got a 50% chance of proccing the hopefully one of the highest elements in here. Ideally, we want electric to be proccing as well, right? So I got a 50% probability of a probability, bam, right? Now, if I have 100% status chance, I'm guaranteed a status element is going to proc. In this scenario here, again, it's just going to be weighted towards electric. That's what we're going to be wanting to proc right off of that. So if I have 154%, you might see where this is going, right? In that one swing, I'm guaranteeing one element with a coin flip, 54% chance of hitting two elements in one swing, right? Now, if we go and continuously with a multiplier of times 12 on here, we're going to end up getting 200, maybe even towards 300% status chance just by swinging the sword. So every swing is going to be like 2 to 3 elements. Bam, bam, bam. So easy, all right? So we're going to go and chuck that in. Furthermore, we're now going to go ahead and throw in the Galvanized Elementalist mods. So there are 2 of these really quickly, and I'm going to explain how this works because there's some people who are super confused by this mod, and I need to really explain how this works. So when it comes towards this mod, what you're looking at is the status damage. And you might be thinking, well, that's status damage, right? As in, like, that is electric status damage. Yes and no. Mostly no. That is electric status damage. This is status damage on an element's status chance that does damage. You might be thinking, what? Okay, read the tooltip on the right. Okay, as it says up there, it says damage dealt by slashed heat, electric, toxin, blast, and gas. So why these elements? I'll also go and throw magnetic in there, but I'll explain magnetic in a second. Why these elements? Well, let's go and read really quickly. When I hit an enemy with slash damage, I'm just doing damage. But if I do a slash status chance, slash as a status effect, slash temporarily ignores the target's armor and causes them to bleed over a time for extra damage. So that basically means when they're bleeding, those bleeds are going to do 80% more damage per bleed. Does that make sense? Now, imagine that on heat. When the enemy's burning, 80% more damage per burn tick. Electric tick, toxin tick, gas tick. Now the one that's a little bit different is blast here, okay? And then we'll explain magnetic. So blast doesn't actually like tick. Blast, when you go ahead and throw it onto them, has like a delayed explosion. So it's not like tick, like bleeds, dots, whatever. It's kind of like a, you hit them, you can build up more blast procs, and then either when a time runs out, I think it's like a second or 2 or whatever, if the time runs out, or if you build up the blast proc to 10 stacks, it then explodes with a detonation delay. Well, that detonation, so if I let's say, make it simpler, I hit you once with a weapon, I get a blast proc. I stop hitting you, 1 second later, you now detonate. You see what I'm saying? It's like imagine implementing a charge on them that's only got like a 1 second detonate afterwards. So that detonate is also being increased by this. Only those. Now, magnetic as an element as well is a little bit different. Magnetic actually does an electric proc, but only if you end up, I think it's dropping their shields. So if you drop their shields with magnetic damage, then an electric proc hits them. So yes, you could run that even in comparison with electric, even with magnetic, you could do it. I don't know why you would, but sure, you know, you could go and do it. Those are the, so for example, if you say, well, what about corrosive? When I go and put corrosive on an enemy, wouldn't that just increase corrosive damage? No, because what does corrosive do as a status chance? It slowly hurts their armor, but it doesn't actually do damage, it just decreases their armor. Well, that's not damage, is it? That's a debuff. See what I'm saying? So now you can understand it. Radiation? Viral? Yeah, you're getting it, right? Those don't work with that. This is all dots, procs, damage, lovely stuff, okay? So now that we've got that so far, we're missing one extra thing, and this is where the faction mods come in. Like I said, this is going to work really well when we're talking Saryn, when we're talking Zarda's Whisper. This is going to effectively allow triple dipping. All right, that's what's going to be going on here. Essentially, again, I'll put the formula up on the screen somewhere here, or I did it earlier, but I'll put it up on the screen again if I didn't do it earlier. I can't remember. Oh my goodness. But basically, what's going to happen here is that it allows it to dip twice when it's dotting, and because we've got electric and we've got gas and even slash, we're going to be dotting. But do keep in mind, melee influence does not transfer physical elements. So if I go and hit an enemy with slash, impact, and puncture, that's not going to spread to other enemies, okay? Instead, the only thing that's spreading here is gas and electric. But we can add 2 other elements. So let's go ahead and get to those elements. And just really quickly, I like to run Discipline's Merit. That's just my 2 cents. I like the fact that I get Tenekai hits more often. Some people like the range one. It's entirely up to you. Okay? So if I now go click here, see the build? That's how it all came together. Hopefully you understood that. And again, you can run this on majority of builds. The parameters that you're looking for is, can you go ahead and yield a good amount of status chance? If you can't yield a good amount of status chance return, if you can't even get like over 100%, maybe don't really consider a melee influence setup, all right? Not every single weapon can take this format, all right? So you might be asking, well, just real quickly before we go and get to Saryn, you might be going and asking, well, why something like Nami Solo? Why something like Okina? Nami Solo is really good because Nami Solo gives the utility that you can't really look to mod the weapon with. If you notice, I've got no range in here. Prime reach is free range, and I've got no attack speed in here, right? But if we actually look at what Nami Solo does when we evolve the Incarnon, it actually gives you +3 range. That is a prime reach. So if you evolve the weapon, you've got a prime reach. Furthermore, you get an extra 100% melee damage, you get sprint and parkour velocity, which isn't too bad. Then you can also go and take evolution 2, you get attack speeds. Now this is also good as well. That's like a fury just added into it with also increased base damage by 80. That's also really nice. On this one, I think you can either do one of 2. I'm not actually too sure how the Lone Blade basically affects follow through, but I don't think it really matters too much. I kind of prefer the combo duration, or you can run narrow-minded, or you can go and run the Naramon score as well to also help the combo duration thing. It's entirely up to you, but I just like the combo duration here. And then you've also got the increase of base status chance on this as well. So this is critical, that's critical on status, that's 30% status, which is why we have so much status going on Nami Solo, and that's why you're seeing Nami Solo in there, all right? Now, Nami Solo also works really well when attacking, because when you do go ahead and just attack forwards, it doesn't stop you. And when you do go ahead and proc Tenekai, you get a 360 spin around you. Again, that's why some people like the extra range on the Tenekai option. For the range one, you can do that. If I go and show you Okina, and I'll just talk about Okina really quickly. Okina doesn't give you the extra range on there. It does go ahead and give you cold status stacks though, so that's another way to go ahead and help you out, an extra element for free. And then this one here is on critical hit, you also get 6 status damage for 10 seconds, stacks up to 5 times, so you get an extra 30% status damage. Now if you keep in mind, this was doing 80, or if you don't have that and you have this mod instead, right? But this one isn't as good because this one's also giving you status chance, right? So any kills, I'm getting built up status chance. That's giving me status chance, lots of status chance. If I do go ahead and apply that one over there, I get 90% status damage, but the heavy attack wind up speed, don't really care for that. Anyways, let's go and say that we take the 80. Well, this has given us an extra 30. So now I'm doing 110 on those ticks and those dots that I'm doing. So now they're doing even more damage, right? Which is fantastic. Over here, you can either go and take the movement speed, which works really well with Saryn's Molt because it stacks with that, so you move even faster, or you can go and take the range. Okay, it doesn't get the same range, unfortunately, as Nami Solo, but it does go ahead and get range regardless, so that's also kind of nice as well. And then over here, this one increases base status chance by 12% and status duration by 25%. And keep in mind, Saryn's already doing 25% with a passive. You're now getting 50% increase towards those dots and procs that you're now doing. So anyways, you can lean towards either of those. Those are looking pretty good. And I will quickly go and just give a little tip as well. If you do go and use daggers, these are dual daggers, not daggers. Let's say that you use something like, I don't know, Rubblejack, right? Which ends pretty heavily in electric. As you can see, it's weighted pretty well in electric. So again, same build that you can go and see here. You'll notice that it says Argonak. well, I'm just going to show you this one really quickly. Argonak, it doesn't have to be run with Saryn, especially if you're running these shards. Oh god, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, Argonak, basically, damage from daggers reduces armor by 6. So if the dagger procs a gas cloud, yeah, as the gas cloud is hitting the enemy and other enemies, it's actually slowly stripping their armor. So that's also interesting as well. So keep that in mind. You can go do that with daggers. You can also go ahead and consider the Ratka Dark Dagger as well, which when they take irradiated targets, you can also go and get yourself shields and overshields. So there's also like a survival route there as well for another melee influence. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So where does Saryn come into all of this? Let's go ahead and quickly cop a Saryn build real quickly. What we're going to want to go and do is look at a build exactly like this. This is the Saryn build that I'm using. Let me go and explain what I'm using, why I'm using it, and how it all comes together. So to start things off with, we're going to be using Saryn's kit. Why Saryn's kit? Because with the Augment that I spoke about earlier, the Augment gives us corrosive to our attacks. Now keep in mind, we're not spreading IPS on melee influence, but we are spreading gas and electric. Now we're spreading gas, electric, and we're also spreading corrosive. Okay, just by adding that on, and 40 seconds is quite generous, so it scales pretty well. Furthermore, we're also using Toxic Lash, which also gives us Toxin. So now we're spreading Toxin, Gas, Electric, and Corrosive, which is pretty damn good, right? As you can imagine. This is going to absolutely obliterate enemies at a very, very fast, rapid rate. Oh my god, does it. So we're going to be adding those two into it. So now I've got 2 extra elements to throw into it. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to be using the Rhino's Raw because I'm doing a lot of dots. I'm doing Toxin, I'm doing Gas, and I'm doing Electric. These are going to scale even further because this is like a faction mod. Now, again, if you have the Zada's Whisper, you can run the Zada's Whisper here. I'm just going to be using that. Zada's Whisper will give you an extra element, so you do even more damage with your condition overloads, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. So anyways, now as we look at the rest of the builds, I'm just going to be adding things like Precision Intensified, so just to enhance the Raw a little bit more, do a little bit more damage, a little bit of strength in here. Now, if you're newer to the game, it's a bit harder for you to go and juggle your energy returns. If you can't use things like Blind Rage, Equilibrium, Flow, right? If you're struggling to use stuff like that, don't do it then. Okay, it's just try and put in what, if you need to put in a streamline, a flow, whatever, that's fine. Just look after your energy first. But when you start getting a lot further into the game, you'll be able to juggle your energy. Now, I'm using Equilibrium because, you'll see this in a lot of my videos, I'm going to be using a companion that actually works really well with melees because it's a very close companion to what I'm doing. So I'm going to be using a primer version, but a synth deconstruct version of the Rigger. But this works within 10 meters. Now, if I'm meleeing, I'm within 10 meters. So this then zaps enemies, right? And as it zaps enemies, Manifold Bond is going to give this zap, this ability here, because it's a preset mods, okay, any mods that have that like that on the side, a preset mod, this is now going to give whatever I apply to its weapon. So it could be any weapon here because I'm not actually letting it shoot, so I don't have an attack mod here. I'm just letting it use arc coil because it's a melee weapon. So now I'm going to put on radiation, I'm going to put on viral, and I'm going to go and put on heat. But do remember what else I was having? I had toxin, I had corrosive, I had gas, and I had electric. Now I have radiation, viral, and heat. That's 7 elements right there. That condition overload's looking pretty tasty, isn't it? Yeah, and remember, viral is amplifying damage to health, okay? So we're already armor stripping with the corrosive anyways, and now viral's also amplifying the damage that all of the dots are doing. We got 3 dots, now we got 4 dots, because heat's now in here. Good stuff, right? You love to see it all come together. So, now what we're going to be doing is just walking them down, mowing them down. Now we don't need this guy to kill, which is great because he won't kill. It's very little damage. So whenever he tickles an enemy and does a little bit of damage, synth deconstruct, those enemies that die have a 25% chance to go and drop a health orb. This is where that helps my build for me getting energy returns to equilibrium. Now, thankfully, it's not a super spammy build because a lot of it is duration. Now, this was 40 seconds. I think it was flat. However, now it is... oh, sorry, that does scale off the duration here. So it's 50, so it's 50, so it'd be 80, so 60. It's about 65-ish seconds that's now lasting for. So duration's gonna be really good here. And again, we also got the Toxin Lash, and that's 45 seconds base, but now it's 69 seconds. So that's almost 70 seconds. That's 46 seconds, and that's 60 odd seconds. we're not going to be spamming an awful lot, as you can see, which means the one thing I do want to go and do is help my survival side of things. This is where I'm going to be using energy. So I'm going to store all of the energy in as much capacity as I can get. As you can see here, lots of capacity. And then what I'm going to go and do is whenever I'm getting her, I'm going to use shield gate into my survival. Now, I explained Molt earlier, it doesn't have an animation cast, which is great. So if they go ahead and remove my shields, I could do one of two things. Number one, I could press 1 with Molt. Brief respite is 150% of energy spent to shields is now gonna, 150% of energy spent is now going to convert it to shields. And on this, that's already 77. So it's going to 150% on top of the 77, which means I basically get my shields fully back. Why? Because I'm going to use something called catalyzing shields. So your maximum shield is normally ×1. This is ×0.2, which means I lose 80% of my shields when I run this build. But that's actually fine, because when it comes to shield gating, I don't know if I'm going to put the graph here or whatever. When it comes to shield gating, there's a set amount. Shield gating can basically scale in a vulnerability. So depending on how much of vulnerability you essentially have, well, depending on how much shields you have will determine how much or how long you stay invulnerable. Well, the thing is, I think you need like, I don't know, 200, 300 shields to go and get at least 1.3. Right? But if you apply this now puts me down to just 70 shields, give or take 74 shields. I think on my 74 shields I now have, but I still get 1.3. Now, if I had 74 shields on any other Warframe, right, maybe like I think Grendel's or stuff like that and whatnot, you would not get the 1.3. You just don't. This allows me to go and capitalize on a much higher immunity on a much lower shield, and I can get that back instantly when I press 2. Because I have Molt with brief respite. See what I'm saying? Now, if I don't have the energy at that point, or if I need a backup, I have rolling guards here. And if I need an even further backup, I'm using Arcane Blessing. You do not need to use Arcane Blessing. I'll tell you what you can go and use here if you want to. You can go use things like Arcane Reaper, which means whenever you go and get a melee kill, you get health regen and 660 armor for 10 seconds. It's not amazing, but it can be good there. You might be wondering, well, why don't I use that instead then? It's because I'm using a shard, which you're going to see in a moment. So that's basically how the build is coming together. I've spoken about everything. Prime short footage should be self-explanatory. I'm just not being knocked down. And I think I got it all. You guys understand that, right? Strength, duration, we should be good. Okay. This is all about buffing my weapon. So hold 1, cast 3, cast 4, now just start meleeing. And that's where Arcane Strike comes in to go and give myself extra attack speed. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So just for the shards really quickly, and I'll go put some gameplay up on the screen. So when it comes towards the shards, first things first, I like to go ahead and start myself off with maximum energy field on spawn. If you're going to hear me, you're going to hear me preach this a lot right now. I'm a big fan of the shards. Preparation is an amazing mod, but I can't always fit it in on my build, so I keep the prime short footed. So this shard is like my preparation. 30% is more than enough when you've got a flow on your build to be able to cast multiple abilities and then just go get killing. Okay, so I will always run this if I can run it. All right, so that's fantastic. That's amber. From there onwards, you'll notice I've got all of the green shards. These are the emeralds. Let's talk about what I've got. So you don't need to do this, but let me explain. Because I'm going to be either on other builds, you could use spores. This isn't a spore build, but I'm using the Augment, which means I'm still applying corrosive. Corrosive goes to 10 stacks, and I think it reduces their armor by 80%. But this adds so each stack from there onwards is 6%. So this adds 2, which would take me to 92%. I think it is. I don't know if I actually got that right. Anyways, if you add 2 lots of this, you add 14 stacks. At 14 stacks of corrosive, you fully armor strip them. Okay, but it's very easy to apply on someone like Saryn. So even if I don't use it on this build, I've got other builds where I am using spores like Sobek and acid shells and stuff like that. Okay, so it's still good to apply to her to go and get these on to go and give yourself a full armor strip. It's not needed nowadays, but the quality of life is still there. Why not chuck it on? Now, the other things I go and use is, again, if I'm not using Arcane Reaper, I can go ahead and use Recover 2 health each time enemies are damaged by a toxin status effect. Do you have any idea how easy that is to apply with someone like Saryn? Believably easy, okay? Believably easy. As you could imagine, I'm spreading lots of elements. I'm doing lots of toxin procs. I'm basically constantly healing over time, and I only need one of those. So if you don't have that shard, use the Arcane Reaper, okay? So the last thing that I currently have is the toxin status effects. I could have maybe done the ability damage on the corrosive, but I would rather just have the toxin damage thrown into what I'm doing, because again, I'm amplifying a lot of dots in my build. So I want to go ahead and continuously amplify those dots and triple dip with what I'm doing with the faction mods as well. Right, okay, hopefully I've explained all of that. I think I have, and if you want to use Naramon Focus Skull, you basically just use the Focus Skull for the melee combo now decays whilst out of combat by 5 instead of completed decay, and that's, you can sit on that there. All right, hopefully I've explained everything right now. I think I have. If you don't really run a primer here, but if you want to, you can run a grimoire if you want to and get extra strength or extra duration. That's up to you. Right, let's go put some gameplay on the screen because that's what you guys are after. Now, try and keep this as short and sweet as possible. As you guys can go and see here, pixel heaven. Compression heaven right now. Everything is going to take dots and die. I am going to be an ultimate killer where I'm using things like my Molt to go ahead and gap close. So I go and press 2, I get in their face. I need a hold 1 to go and get my Augment buff. I need to go and tap 3 to go and get my Toxic Lash buff. I need to go and press 4 to go and get my Raw buff, or Stardust Whisper. It's up to you what you want to go and run. When I've got all of those on, I'm basically just auto-attacking. That is essentially it. Now, if I can go and use Tenakai here, it's also nice. Acolytes won't really be a problem. Frax won't really be a problem. Certain units are just going to be absolutely dunzoed when they meet you with this build, all right? You're going to be able to just absolutely mow through them. Now, I will go and say, like I said, the survival side of the build is up in arms as to how you want to survive. For me, I'm happy with the way that I run this build, but if you feel like, damn, I need a different form of survival, you take your course of action to change your survival. All right, I'm not going to go and sit there and educate you on that one. Hopefully you've learned enough from what's going on here that you guys can start to see how everything is all put together. Okay, but overall, fantastic. If you're looking for status melee builds, look no further. Saryn has got you covered. Let's go ahead and bring you back over here. What did it do? Wow, what a big video. But hopefully you guys learned an awful lot. This was one take, by the way. Yeah, we did it. One take. But no, I really enjoyed making this video, and I'm enjoying making videos lately. So all I am going to go and say is that if you guys like these videos as well, please go ahead and leave a like. If you do want to go ahead and share the video with a friend, that would help me. So more views will go ahead and look after me as well. And if you are new, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm losing my voice. But I will see you guys again in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.